Hi, gang. This week we're talking about positive psychology, which is the therapeutic, the kind of official name for basically the idea that positive thinking can transform our minds. So, thinking positive can make us feel positive. So, this week we're going to talk about this very um, influential and kind of ubiquitous uh, idea in our culture that there is a power to positive thinking. And we're going to link that idea to the concept of neoliberal governmentality that we talked about last week. And finally, to the concept of productivity in a capitalist society. Okay, so let's go. First, just better understanding positive psychology. It's the belief that we can generate happiness through positive thinking. So right there, we already see that there's this idea that you produce happiness, you make it happen. It doesn't exist in a free-floating state in the world. It's something that we can either choose to make for ourselves or not choose to make. So it's really an example of neoliberal governmentality in everyday life. This idea that we are responsible for our own happiness. No one else is responsible for making us happy. We can't expect to find happiness out there in the world. It's really up to us to kind of orient our minds towards happiness. Otherwise, it might just not happen for us, right? We might not feel it. And the other kind of underpinning here is that it's just a matter of making an effort, right? The power of positive thinking implies that if you try hard enough, you can make yourself happy, that it's really just a matter of making an effort. And again, the absence of happiness could be due to the absence of effort instead of other reasons why someone might be unhappy. So basically, and sorry, my little video here is blocking some of the words here. By manufacturing happiness, people can become more productive members of society. That's the kind of neoliberal undertone of positive psychology. Often happy people have an easier time at work. They have an easier time with their relationships. They can work harder. They can work for longer. They require less time just to kind of restore themselves, for example. So there is, as you can see, this kind of connection already right in the first slide between positive psychology, positive thinking, and working hard. In ancient times and up until really the Industrial Revolution, happiness was a kind of intangible quality that each person experienced in their own way. It was an intimate experience. It was something that was very personal. It wasn't something that people were expected to generate. You either felt it or you didn't feel it, but it was all really about your own personal psychology. It has emerged over the course of the sort of capitalist uh, the capitalist social order that defined the 20th century and now the 21st century. It has emerged as a goal, a product, a kind of problem to be solved. How do we get happier? How do we make ourselves happier? If you go back to the whole concept of self-help that we talked about last week, if you go to the self-help section of a bookstore, you'll see a lot of books about finding happiness, generating happiness, be more happy. It's a big project that a lot of people have really committed a lot of energy to. There's also nonprofits that measure gross domestic happiness. So instead of gross domestic product, which is how a nation's economy is measured based on how much money each citizen produces, how much economic production is made. Instead, these metrics basically measure how happy people are. And there's something called the World Happiness Report, which you can find online, which basically ranks countries based on how people in these countries have responded to questionnaires about how happy they are. Usually, a Scandinavian country is found to be the happiest. It's often, like Denmark or another country. Where people turn out to be the happiest people in the world, but it's a very kind of unscientific measure because first of all, who's answering the questionnaires, and second of all, how are the questionnaires worded, right? But these are these reports that people find very interesting, and they always get covered in the media a lot because people are interested in what makes certain people happier than others, right? So positive psychology is the belief that people can change their own minds by thinking positive thoughts and being optimistic, that they can retrain their ways of thinking to make them they make themselves happier. And again, this is very neoliberal because it puts all of the responsibility on the individual for making themselves happy instead of suggesting that maybe the cause of someone's discomfort might exist outside of themselves, like in society. Maybe someone belongs to a marginalized group and is being ignored and basically made invisible in society. Maybe someone is, involved in an abusive relationship. Maybe someone is in a hopeless economic situation where they don't feel that they can possibly fulfill their potential because there are no opportunities for them. These are all reasons that people often, feel unhappy. But the positive psychology movement would argue that it's up to these people to change their own minds through positive thinking. And by doing that, they can overcome any obstacles that lie before them. So I'd like to talk when we chat on Zoom later about whether or not you guys agree with that. Is happiness just a matter of thinking good thoughts? So positive psychology has really become a big part of pop culture and a big part of the way that we're encouraged to behave on a daily basis. Um, some familiar outgrowths of positive psych that you might have encountered in your daily life include encouragements to practice gratitude, so being thankful for what we have, focusing on our strengths rather than our weaknesses as we go through life, work, school, whatever the case may be. Also encouraging other people, being a good team member. All of these are really good things to do. They're pro-social behaviors. They're behaviors that tend to, make other people feel good. There's certainly nothing wrong with positive psychology, and I don't mean to argue that. But it is interesting to look at the links between neoliberal governmentality and positive psychology, while also acknowledging that there are aspects of positive psych that are just really about being a nice person and about trying to, kind of be a force for good in the world.